It's 1992 and we all know that Bell's decanters are probably the best investments on the market. So in this video cassette, we're going to look at everything you need to know about these fantastic weighed decanters. So welcome to your latest video cassette on whiskey investment, and we all know that Bell's decanters are some of the best investments out there. I mean, come on, one sold recently for £1,200 and that was the Charles and Diana decanter. So what do you need to know about all of these amazing decanters and how much money should you be investing in them? Well, that was a bit of a horrible time warp, wasn't it? Welcome back to 2022. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Mark Littler. I'm a whiskey consultant, market broker and analyst. And if you need to know anything about rare whiskey collecting or investing, head to marklittler.com. And as I've said, in this video, we're talking all about Bell's decanters. Why? Because at one point, these were the hottest bottles of whiskey that you could buy on the market. And yet today, the complete opposite is the case. And I think it's quite interesting, so bear with me on this, they're a really fascinating sort of piece of whiskey collecting, and it kind of influences what happens today. So the first thing that you need to know is a bit about Bell's. So Bell's were founded in 1851 by Arthur Bell, and he started to blend whiskey essentially to try and keep a more uniform product that he was selling. So they were blending a lot of grain and a lot of malts together, and the Bell's bottles are interesting because they contain so many trademarks. You know, the bottle itself hasn't really changed in value. So it changed in design over sort of several decades now. And in 1978, it was the world's best, or the UK's best selling blended whiskey on the market. And between 1970 and 1979, their market share grew by more than 800%. You know, their sales grew more than 800%. So they had something amazing going on. Now, what they were doing with this is essentially just incredible marketing, which is what echoes back to what we are seeing today with the likes of Macallan, with those James Bonds that we just did a video about. Their marketing was absolutely on point. Now, in the 1920s and 1930s, Bell started to produce special decanters of their blended whiskey inside a bell-shaped decanter. Now, these were often done for commemorative events, mostly royal commemorative events. And the one that I mentioned earlier, the Charles and Diana decanter, yeah, that really did so for over £1,000 back in the early 1990s. These were really, really sought after. Now, they, as well as the commemorative decanters, they also started releasing decanters at Christmas time. I think this was from 1988 onwards. They started releasing a special Christmas decanter, and they were beautifully marketed. Like, look at this from a marketing perspective. They were coated in 22 karat gold. So again, oh gosh, this is the height of luxury here. The packaging was really nice, and to be honest with you, good. You know, the decanters themselves, it stood out from everything. And you know, if you had a bottle of this on your sideboard at your dinner party when you were serving your prawn cocktails, it looked fancy, even though you hadn't actually spent that much money. Now, what I find fascinating is the reason that these decanters were selling for over £1,000 each. And it's not because of the whiskey, and that's the key thing to understand about these Bell's decanters. The whiskey in each decanter is the same. It's just standard Bell's. Does that hark back to the James Bond Macallan edition, anyone? The whiskey across them all was the same, but people collected them not because of the whiskey, but because of what was on the outside of them. Now, you go back to the early 1990s and royal commemorative collecting was massive. It was absolutely huge. I mean, Bonhams and Phillips had specialist royal commemorative auctions, and you know, at that time, you could buy and sell these bottles on eBay quite easily. And to be honest with you, that was the death blow for Bell's decanters. It was around 2005, I believe, that eBay banned the sale of alcohol. Now, up to that point, people were putting these decanters in royal commemoratives and just sort of selling them with a bottle with contents. And amazingly enough, they were sort of sold through them. And you kind of think, well, gosh, that could never happen today. And it can't happen in the UK today, because to sell alcohol, you need a personal license, a premises license, and if you're in the trade, you need to be on the alcohol wholesale registration scheme. Now, That really killed the Bell's decanters because it wasn't really whiskey fans that were buying these. So you put these decanters into a whiskey auction, nobody wants them. It's just standard Bell's blend. Who the hell wants that? I'll go and buy a 15 quid bottle from the shop or 20 quid for a litre at Christmas. So from a whiskey collecting point of view, these decanters have got no value. You then start looking at the Royal Commemorative buyers, and how many of your friends and family are still collecting Royal Commemorative wares? Probably very few. But if you go back to the 1990s, collecting Royal Commemorative wares was probably about as trendy as collecting whiskey is today. So you have to understand the context of the market that these were being sold in. They were once extremely popular, and now they're not very popular. Now, it's interesting with these that one of the biggest problems with them is that they're so bloody hard to post. So even if you could find an auction house that would put these in for you now, how do you post them? They don't fit inside a normal bottle jacket, the seals are terrible, they've been stood up for 30 odd years, so their corks are all dry, they're going to leak everywhere. So even if you've got a load of these Bell's Royal Commemorative decanters, just drink them, get them open this Christmas, enjoy them with your friends, and that's about the best thing to do. Now, there is a message here for any whiskey collectors in 2022. You know, these decanters were not being bought because of the whiskey, it was being bought because of the decanter. Alarm bells ringing here? You know, that market for the Bell's decanters dropped away as soon as that trend sort of fell aside. In 2022, look at those James Bond Macallan releases. The whiskey itself is just no age statement whiskey. There isn't really much propping it up. You know, the design of the carton and the tube is so-so. There's nothing really fundamental propping up these valuations. And that was the same with the Bell's decanters. So if you're collecting now, don't just look at the boxes themselves. You know, the boxes are important, but there needs to be something else fundamental propping up the value if you're collecting whiskey. Therefore, you need to look at what's inside the bottle and not just what's on the bottle. You know, there's an interesting ratio there, but if the market ever does change and pivot away from this sort of like trend for no age statement whiskey, then a lot of you collectors, I'm going to get stuck with a load of bottles. If the market moves away from this trend for no age statement whiskey, there will be a significant change in prices with all of these. So we've talked about Bell's decanters on a whiskey investment channel. I hope you enjoyed it. There are some parallels that you need to be aware of between these two markets, so be careful. And also, if you're thinking about getting in touch because you've got some Bell's decanters to sell, please don't. Please just open them, enjoy them, and share them with your friends.